Hi and welcome to the 64 Doors. Today we're going to open door 28. Here we find the Daredevil, and this is an archetype that is all about risk-taking and finding his purpose. We're going to explore the Daredevil from a human design perspective and a Gene Key perspective. Here we have the Rave Mandala with all the astrological signs inside and then all the hexagrams around. This is 1 year. The sun is going to go through all the astrological signs and all of the hexagrams. Right now we have the sun in the beginning of Scorpio in gate 28. We have the earth in Taurus in gate 27. And the design part of the cross is the 41 in Aquarius and the 31 in Leo. If you are born in the 6 days where the sun is going to be in gate 28, you're going to have one of 3 incarnation crosses. Those are the cross of the unexpected, the cross of risks, and the cross of alignment. Since the cross is not a 90-degree cross, but an 88-degree cross, you're going to see that it's going to change the design part. So in the first cross, we have the 31 and the 41. So here, the theme of the Daredevil or the game player is combined with a theme that has to do with leadership. The alpha is the 31 and the initiator is the 41, the one that can see and anticipate things. And then in the 2 other crosses, you can see that this theme of the game player is combined with the 33 and the 19. And in the 64 doors, we're calling the 33 the medicine woman and the 19 the utilitarian. So it's a different energy. And you can read about your cross. This is what Ra says. It's 70% of who you are, you could say it's your destiny. And in the gene keys, you can create your profile. The incarnation cross is the same thing as your activation sequence. And there you can read about each key or each gate apart. So you can create the story, have 1 paragraph about each one of these 4. If you go back to the body graph and we look at it in the standard view, you're going to see that the 28 is a splenic gate. And we have been through all of the splenic gate. No, the 44 is left. All the splenic gate except the 44 has been where we were for all these months. We can even go back and look at it. So we go counterclockwise. When we look at the wheel, the sun has been here in the 18, in the 48, in the 57, the 32, the 50. Now we are in the 28, and the last splenic gate is going to be the 44 next week. So that's where we are moving through. So the 28 is a splenic gate and it points toward the root center and the 38. In the circuitry book, we see that this is the channel of struggle. It's a design of stubbornness. I have this in my, one of my 3 channels is the channel of struggle. I have it, it's completely black in my chart. So it's my personality, you could say. I have the 28 twice, which is my moon and my Jupiter. So it's very much dictating, I would say, my personality. And here it says, your life is an archetypal hero's journey against overwhelming odds. The goal is to remain yourself and go your own way, no matter what anybody else thinks or says. So this is very much combined with the fact that this is individual circuitry, that the struggle here is very personal, and it's about finding that individual purpose. And also, since we are speaking about individual circuitry, there's going to be melancholy in it as well when this 28 is not finding the purpose. So when we look at the 28 by itself, it says the gate of the game player, and it says people who are always ready to take risks in order to find meaning in life. And I really recognize that there is nothing that I wouldn't do if it was worth it. So when I was 18, for example, I moved to France by myself, and it was kind of not easy, but quite easy as long as I was in school, although I didn't speak French that well, and I was at university and I cried for 2 weeks because I didn't understand anything in the books. But then something clicked after all these nights of not understanding, like 2 weeks in, and I just like, it just opened up, and suddenly I could find a way of understanding it and a purpose and all that. But it didn't become hard until I moved from Nice to Paris, and I actually didn't have anything. It was more like this risk. I felt like Nice was a small city and that it wasn't really the adventure that I had been wanting to live. So then I went to this very, very big city, and that's where the adventure started. And it wasn't always easy. Being somebody quite naive, I have the 25 in my chart as well, so there's this kind of innocence, and I learned a lot. And it didn't always go well, but there was a kind of purpose. And I remember asking myself when I was 19, I was like, why am I still here? I remember I had even spoken to my mom, I think, and there was like no reason for me. It was just so much struggle. And still I had to kind of live out that adventure in order to feel that there was a purpose with it. And I guess that's the thing too with the 28 and the 38, to know also when enough is enough, when the struggle has become just like banging your head against the wall. That I think can be a little bit hard. And there is a kind of deafness in the individual circuitry, especially in these gates, that doesn't really want to hear the logic of somebody else, because there is a different logic. There is a Scorpio logic here, and Scorpio kind of wants to die and get born again to something new. So that is my experience of it. And then, I mean, it just continues in this theme. If we go into the gene keys and we speak about this frequency band that we always do, that we have the low frequency is contracted, is fear-based, and the purposelessness. For me, could have been like, okay, why did I have to come here and struggle? And then kind of just go back to Sweden. And then it would have been like, what was the purpose? Why did I even go here? Why did I even come back? What's the purpose? Like, it would have stayed. But since I had the courage to stay and kind of figure out the complicated situations as a 19-year-old, I feel like I really was able to tap into the higher frequency of the 28, which is about like waking up in the morning and knowing that it's worth it, that you kind of live in every moment, and that life is like that it's never boring. And so totality really speaks about that. And the highest frequency is immortality, and that also has to do with being alive in the moment. So it doesn't matter if life ends the next moment. And the key phrase, embracing the dark side. So we see very much this Scorpio theme, fixed water. The programming partner is the 27. That's the other side of the cross that we were seeing. The 27 has a lot to do with caring. And it's about having that balance, caring about yourself and caring about the other. And that I can say for me, I do feel, I don't have the 27. I do feel like that could be sometimes like a little bit too much risk taking, and a little bit too not really understand how to care about yourself, or drink first from your cup before you give it away. So that's part of like the risk assessment, I would say, to be sure that you're nurturing yourself first. We can go into the codering that has very much to do with this theme. So here we have the 32 that we were in not that long ago. Now the 28, so this is the ring of illusion. It has to do with this fear of dying, or the fear of not living, or the fear of dying unfulfilled. So all these kind of fears that have to do with how you're using your life, if it's for a purpose or not. And what can happen in the low frequency of the 32 and the 28 is that we postpone our life. And then we realize that we're kind of too old to live, or we don't realize it until we die, basically. So here again, it's about coming back to the now and the present, and live every moment fully. And I can really think about this for me this year, where I have been like, okay, I can't travel, it's COVID, I just have to kind of stop. And a part of me has been wanting to like get done with a lot of things, and and just kind of create a foundation and be efficient. And another part of me has this, because I learned it probably when I did embrace the dark side about 7-8 years ago, when I had a complete breakdown. Part of what I learned from that was that every day needs to have a purpose. I want to go to bed every night and say this day was worth it, because I had that existential pain of having lived so many days that really on the inside of like what really means something, it didn't mean anything. And that was part of like really having to look that in the eye. And we always have those like spirals in life when we come back, and we have the opportunity to come back and do the same or do it better. So I feel like it has been like a test for me now as well, to see, okay, how do you find your immortality, your totality, when you kind of when you don't have the opportunity, with all the risk that you usually have, you know, the fun risks of traveling and discovering and orienting, which has been with my second gene key in my life's work, has always been what I do. I orient, I travel, I discover. And then to be able to not kind of dry up and just become this efficient machine again, because there is no, it doesn't seemingly feel like there is so much adventure. But knowing that whether it's the inner adventure or the outer adventure, there's always a way of finding totality in our life experience. So going forward, astrology. So we said it was Scorpio gate. This is really the first gate that is completely in Scorpio. We were in the 50 last week, so that's on the cusp. So that has both Libra and Scorpio. Now we're completely into the Scorpio energy. The sorceress, the shaman, the alchemist. It's about authenticity, self-service. It's service to self-growth through the authentic expression of the awakened heart. So it's not true that Scorpio doesn't have a heart and that he's just all about dying in the deep waters and the intensity. No, really, the heart, I would say, is what Scorpio cares about. And it's like when everything else dies, you know, you don't have to be afraid everything dies, because the heart is the most powerful of everything. So it can't die. It's just going to be more awakened when everything else falls apart. So that's my kind of interpretation of that. So here I think this is beautiful. Scorpio is the depth of the ocean, the waters of emotional authenticity, and the rebirth of magic. Yeah, I'm very biased, I think. This is my moon. So let's continue. The Codering is what we did. We have the EChain. So here we say critical mass, great excess. It's a lake over wind. So lake is 2 trigrams of the 58. So that is dissatisfaction, vitality, and bliss. In the frequency band, then we have wind, which is it's 2 trigrams of the 57, unease, intuition, and clarity. So the geometry is that this 28 is built up of the lake and the wind. Purposelessness is dissatisfaction of unease. Totality is the vitality of intuition. Immortality is the bliss of clarity. So beautiful. Submerging the secret teachings within the simple joy of living. Integral human design. So here is the really cool thing with integral human design. We don't only have a frequency band for the actual gate or gene key, we also have it for that whole channel. So here you see again the channel that we spoke about goes from the splenic center down into the root. It's part of the individual circuitry, which is called the stream of creativity in integral human design, and strife, purpose, and victory. That's for the whole channel. And the dream arc, we have the crow, the cheetah, the cicada, and Jane Addams is painting them every week. We're always featuring them in the 64 doors under the specific door, whatever she does. So you can find it there as well. Also, she usually paints the codon rings so that you can see how that geometry is. Here we have the mudra. The mudra is kind of simple, just like this, and then you have like your thumbs pointing on each sides. And if you want to like have the explanation, Richard is selling the library where he does a like 1.5 minute video for each one of of the keys. There is one more thing I wanted to mention before we move on into seeing how we can use this week. And that is coming from the 7 Years on the Wheel, which is Richard's book to speak about the deconditioning process. So human design is a kind of experiment where we go in and we want to realize that there are parts of us that are conditioned from our upbringing, our culture, the pressure from other people to be in a certain way. But it's not necessarily really who we're here to be. It's more about adapting to something because we feel like that's the conditioning, that's the pressure. So what we want to do with both Jinkies and human design is to look at what is my true self. How can I embody my true self? And the difference, if we think about astrology and human design and Jinkies, is that we have, two sides. So if we look at this Brave Mandala, if we look at normal astrology, you would only have everything that's black, and you would look at the aspects, like the relationship between the different planets, and you would understand, what is the soul's mission here. What we are doing in Jinkies and human design is that we're adding another layer where we go back from the moment that this person is born. If it's born today, for example, we go back 3 months in time. We are in Leo, and we add the sun in that position plus all the other gates, and suddenly we have this play that is all the planets in the moment we are born, all the planets 3 months before, and that becomes a dance. And it's also what you see, it's red and black inside the body graph, and that's a dance. And this side is about the soul, the unconscious, the DNA that wants to speak through this role, this personality. So we want them to be friends with each other. And with those systems, we can understand also a lot of what is the purpose of the soul. And it's a little bit somehow easier than to have to learn about all the relationships and the aspects if we look only at the astrology. So of course, for me, both systems are interesting, but there is something amazing with adding this soul side to it. So in the book that I was just showing you, Richard is going through the wheel, and he starts in gate 3, which I think is in Aries, and that is like the eternal child. That's where we start our deconditioning process. And the way that it's done in the book is that you spend 40 days in each gate. It's going to take 7 years around the wheel. So you can, if you know the date that you started your human design experiment, you could say, or that you first saw your body graph, you can count from that date and then be 40 days in every gate and see where you are right now. I find it interesting to also just look at the explanation and feel like, okay, this is probably activated now. Wherever you are on your 7-year journey, this is probably activated right now. So last week we were speaking about being in the 50, and the 50, as you know, is the programming partner to the 3. So when we start in the 3 and we come to the 50, we are really halfway through the wheel. And that's when you could say that you're like, if there is like a 50% point, you are more in your true self than in your conditioned self when you come to that midpoint. So this is the very first gate after the 50, when you're kind of on that positive side of being more yourself than conditioned. So here, let me just read those 2 or 3 sentences about the 28. And it says, having made this magical transition into the heart and a higher frequency field, everything about us changes. Slowly at first and then faster and faster. The first thing we may realize is why we are actually here. The 28 is the gate of fear of death, and the quest for true purpose. Having faced our fears, we may feel a renewed sense of vigor and a deeper surrender to life than ever before. We realize that our life is precious beyond belief, and that from now on, we must give ourselves totally to every moment. So here you can see this was written before the Gene Keys, but it's already, Richard had this understanding of the codering, of the message of the 28, especially as it moves from the low frequency to the higher frequency. This is a week with the opportunity to embrace the dark. We are in Scorpio energy, we're going to have a full moon. We're going to be very close to Halloween. And I remember Halloween from I was a child, and it wasn't called like that in Sweden. It was a day of honoring everybody has passed to the other side. It was November 1st, and we would go to the graveyards with the candles. And similar, if I remember, in Spain as well, really about honoring, and honoring also the memories, and kind of also stop to do things. Like, it was a day where it wouldn't be any other activities. A little bit like the Friday in the Christian religions. We used to have the long Friday when Jesus was put on the cross. That was the other day of the year, which is in Easter. So I would remember that day in April, that everything was really calm and everything was closed and the music on the radio was sad. And then the 1st of November was a similar thing. And I remember those things as beautiful, and the honoring of that other side as well. So it is a week to look at what's ready to die inside of you. What are you ready to transcend, for example? And in the 64 doors, we always provide you with quite a lot of questions for contemplation and reflection. And I would say that's a really, really good way to work with the energy of the transit. We have the sun who is, shining on this right now. So we have so much energy from the sun, so much help to work with whatever that activation is. So if we go into some of the questions that we have is the relationship that you have with shamanism, the relationship you have with rituals and ceremonies. Like how are they included in your life? Do you have an altar at home, for example? And have you been doing plant medicine or any other forms of ceremonies? It can also be a week of looking at this risk-taking, of the gambling that maybe makes you feel alive, but in a way it's an escape at the same time, because it's not really that kind of ego death that we're speaking about in Scorpio. It's a more superficial risk-taking in a way, and something that could also be more connected to a kind of addiction of never being able to really stop and sit and kind of allow what needs to die. So really look at that. Are you able to sit still, or do you feel like you always have to be on the move? And of course, a week to look at your purpose. Do you feel aligned with your purpose? When you look at your gene keys or human design, when you look at the black and the red, so for example, when you look at life's work and evolution, and then on the other side, you have your radiance and your purpose. Do you feel that the keywords of those 4 keys are playing together? Or are you, for example, stuck in that challenge between the life's work and the evolution, so that you aren't able to break through into that radiance and that purpose, which are going to feel like you don't have a core stability, and can be those patterns of repeating the same thing over and over again. So is there any pattern in your life that wants to stop spinning? That's a really good question and a contemplation for this week. So thank you so much, and I'll be back next week.